Okay, we are rolling. We are on. Yes. See? All right. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Hope Bohanec. I am the organizer of today's event. And yay! First ever Eugene VeganFest! Woo! Very, very exciting. All right. So I've been vegan myself for 35 years. I have been working, she's like, me too. I love it. I have been working for national nonprofits for veganism, animal rights for my whole adult life for 30 years. And I started my own nonprofit just in the last few years during the pandemic, Compassionate Living. And we are the sponsor and host of today's event. And yay. And I want to share with you 7 reasons to live vegan that you may not have thought of. Okay, so we're going to get into some interesting stuff. Some of them you may have thought of, some of them you may not have. But let's start. Oh, first of all, yeah, I'm going to say this. So everything that you're going to hear about today, all that you're going to hear about, the food's effect on your body, on the planet, all of that, animals are at the heart of this issue, and that's what this room is about. That's what this event is about for me. At its heart is the animals, and they're often hidden from us. They are off in a feedlot somewhere, at the windowless warehouse, at a slaughterhouse, or on a farmed animal sanctuary. Some of the lucky ones. We have 8 farmed animal sanctuaries and rescues represented here. Be sure and support them. So there are lucky ones, but they're often separated from us, hidden from us, right? So I wanted to bring them into the conversation in a real way today. So anyway, we're going to go into our first reason for living vegan, and that is speciesism. Speciesism, maybe a word you haven't heard of before. Speciesism, basically you can think about this as another system of structural violence, right? Like ones that we know, racism, sexism, homophobia, right? Speciesism is a collection of attitudes, ideas, beliefs that one species is dominant over the other or is more important than the other. This is a false belief, of course. It can also be like subconscious cultural and psychological patterns. Even vegans fall into speciesist thinking and actions at times. So, it can be unconscious as well. And, at this point, this assumption of human superiority over basically every species on the planet of the entire animal kingdom has allowed for horrific exploitation of animals worldwide. And veganism disrupts that system of systematic violence, right? It disrupts that exploitation of non-human animals. At its heart, veganism is a boycott, right? A boycott, that's kind of the foundation of meat, dairy, eggs. And that's a great place to start. But there's so much more. There's so many places to go from there. There's ethical veganism. There's philosophical veganism. There's even spiritual veganism. And speciesism kind of encompasses all of this, right? We could eliminate an immeasurable amount of suffering with a worldwide cultural shift to veganism. But I think what's less apparent is that we would also be helping humans, right? There's so many ways that these issues overlap and intertwine. Our own human fate rests in how we treat animals. And I really encourage you to stay for the next presentation with Lauren Ornelas. She will really get into that human connection with the animal industrial complex. And I don't have time to get into it. But this is my message. I feel that we need to, as animal advocates, really recognize that we are just another ally to the larger social justice piece, right? We are part of the social justice movement. Veganism, to me, it's a boycott, of meat, dairy, and eggs, of a very oppressive system. But it's also larger than that. It is just another form of systematic violence, speciesism. And we should recognize that just, treating someone cruelly, taking away their agency, killing them for profit, this can never be humane, can never be the way to live. So anyway, I'm trying to get to everything, so much I want to say. But I'll just say, so, science and common sense, for that matter, now tells us undoubtedly that non-human animals feel pain and suffer, and there's trauma, that they experience trauma. They're profoundly emotional and sentient. Let's go to the next slide. So we often think of the pain that's inflicted on animals in food production, but they suffer psychological distress as well. And I don't think that's realized. I don't think people think that they could have psychological distress, right? And there's so much. It's really sad. So I talk about things like babies being taken away from their mothers, separation of family groups, and I'm going to get into more of that in the next one. The horrible monotony of being in these barren places with no stimulation, lack of agency and freedom. All these things affect them deeply, affect them very deeply. So it's really imperative that we tell their stories, focus on their very real and relevant agony and misery, as well as their joy and their jubilance and their sentience. So with that, we're going to move on to our second reason for living vegan, and that is, it's slow to turn, isn't it? Chickens. Chickens. So chickens are often thought of as, they're just kind of this big flock of, birds that don't have a lot of feeling, don't have a lot going on, right? That couldn't be further from the truth. They're amazing. This is Kakuta. I rescued Kakuta from almost like he was on the brink of death. It's a long story, and I actually get into it in, I'm going to talk about my books later, but in this is one of my books, The Humane Hoax, and I talk about Kakuta's story in that book. But it was amazing to rescue him, to nurse him back to health. And I say that he took me to a new level of love, because I got so deeply connected to him, and he was such an amazing soul and a gentleman and amazing. And it was almost like, I just couldn't imagine someone would actually kill and eat him. It just was heartbreaking. I couldn't believe that was his species' fate on this planet, right? So sad. Let's go to the next slide. Chickens are individuals with emotions, personality. They're amazing birds. And when I say separation of families, so I worked with United Poultry Concerns for almost a decade. United Poultry Concerns is a vegan nonprofit focused on chickens and turkeys and other birds that are raised for their flesh and their eggs. And Karen Davis was their was the executive director, and she knew chickens better than anyone on earth. And I don't think that is controversial to say. She knew them so well. And she used to say that they were cheerful birds. Like, that was their inherent nature, was cheerfulness. And I always thought that was so amazing. I was like, wow, really? You just kind of don't think about that, right? But she said, no, they're really, when they are able to live a full life, they are cheerful birds. It's so beautiful to say. And when I talk about separation of families, I'll say that often when I'm talking about the horrors of animal agriculture. And you can kind of see this picture. So when a little chick in a natural situation, a wild situation, when a chick gets separated, and this could be for geese and turkeys and anybody, a chick will get separated from the mom hen, and they'll start peeping and freaking out like they can't find the mom, and the mom will start vocalizing, and they're trying to find each other, and there's this moment of panic, and finally they'll find each other, and then they feel secure and safe, and everything's okay, right? In modern industrial farming, the chicks are hatched in hatcheries. They're in metal drawers. They come out into this world never knowing their mother, never getting to experience that. And you go into a hatchery, and there's this high-pitched peeping, all this really intense peeping of, the thousands of chicks that have been hatched. And guess what? They're calling for their mother. They're scared. They don't know what's going on. They are looking for their mother hen, and they will never find her. That will never be satisfied. They'll never feel that sense of safety and protection. It's horrific what happens. Okay, I'm taking too much time. We need to move on to the next reason for living vegan, and that is the earth. Speaking of beings that need protection, okay, the most environmentally impactful daily choice we can make is what we eat. Eliminating animals has the most positive impact. So let's actually move on. Animal farming, animal foods are really inefficient. Very wasteful. It's an incredibly wasteful industry, lots of resource, and it's very resource intensive. Just having billions of farmed animals alive, no matter how they're raised. You know, there's all these, and we're going to get into it a little bit, all these new labels and stuff, a little bit of a lot of greenwashing going on. No matter how they're raised, it still uses tons of resources. Water causes pollution, climate disruption, deforestation, water waste, pollution, all of that, biodiversity loss. And I don't have the time to go into all those in depth, but what I would like to talk about is, what do we do about it, right? What can we do about it? Well, the industry has a solution for you. The industry has something that you could do. They're like, oh, well, hey, why don't you try sustainable this or carbon neutral that, right? All these labels. We're seeing lots of sustainable labels on animal products. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, let's look into that. So please, if you want, there's lots of chairs over here if anybody wants to sit. So we've got 3 diets here. Veganism, vegetarian, and a diet that includes meat, dairy, and eggs down here at the bottom, okay? Light green line is organic farming, dark green line is conventional, and then how far it goes across is the impact. And this is specific to climate, but you'll see this across the board when you look at water use or air pollution or whatever. Okay, down there at the bottom, see that dark green line at the bottom? That is the standard American diet. That's where everybody is, and that's how much impact they are putting out, okay? So let's say someone says, I want to eat more green. I want to really green my diet. I want to eat more ecologically. I'm going to eat all organic. I'm going to eat organic meat and organic dairy. Okay, well, you're doing a little bit. You drop down to that light green line down here, and you've dropped your impact by 8%. That's something. But let's say that same person says, you know, I really want to eat more ecologically. I want to really, you know, help the planet with my diet. I'm going to go vegan. And now we're not even talking about organic anymore. You drop down to that tiny little dark green line at the top there, and you've reduced your impact by 87%. Wow. Now we're talking, right? You can take it all the way and go to organic vegan, and you've dropped down to 94% reduction of impact in your diet. And you see this again and again with any label, local, grass-fed, whatever. This is what you'll see. Actually, though, interestingly, for some of these labels, and let's go to the next slide, for some of the labels, it can be even worse. Grass-fed beef, we are learning now that 50 to 60% more greenhouse gas emissions are coming from grass-fed beef production than from conventional farming. What? What? Why are people buying this label? They think it's more environmental. But now we've got studies out of Harvard and Oxford and Washington State that compare conventional cows with grass-fed cows. Again and again, they find that the grass-fed requires more water, more land, more fossil fuels, produces more greenhouse gases. I mean, this is a situation where it doesn't even, it's not neutral. I mean, it doesn't mean nothing. It's worse. So frustrating. So let's move to the next slide. Yeah. So, free-ranging, grass-fed, and now we're going to hear a lot about regenerative grazing. This is the new buzzword for let's continue to eat beef because going back. There we go. Regenerative grazing. So anyway, it doesn't hold water scientifically. And again, I have a lot in my books about this. Okay, we'll go on to the next one. So the next reason for living vegan that you may not have thought of is fish. Fish are the forgotten food animal, truly the forgotten food animal. We don't acknowledge them enough. We don't acknowledge their suffering in the same way that we do cows and pigs. And I'm going to talk about that. So moving on to the next, sorry. So the number of fish killed each year far exceeds the number of people who have ever existed on Earth. Wow. Every year. It's staggering. It's an estimated 100 billion farm fish are killed globally every year, and about another 3 trillion fish are killed in the wild. And just, think about this. Fishing is just hunting, right? If you're against hunting, you should be against fishing. Why? It's going in to an animal's home and killing them. What is the difference? It's the same. So if you're against hunting, should be against fishing too. So oftentimes when we're talking about fish, though, even as vegans and as animal rights people, we're often talking about the environmental impact, right? I don't want to talk about that. That's huge, and there's a lot about that, and I encourage you to watch the film Seaspiracy to get a big dose of that. But what I want to talk about is the fish themselves. We're learning so much. We have been under this impression, this very false impression, that fish, are somehow simple or unfeeling or primitive or unintelligent. Science is debunking that as we speak. And again, I'll invite people to sit over here if you want. I'll actually, there's a book that I got a lot of this out of. I'll talk about that book. But fish are individuals with awareness and emotion. They have great memories. There's this myth that fish have short-term memories or something. It's totally a myth. They have really deep memories, and they will, even if they have an encounter with a predator and get hurt and escape, they will avoid that area for a very long time, things like that. I mean, we know that fish can remember. And they also have fear and anxiety. And I think this is really very prevalent to our conversation today, which is whether we should kill and eat fish, right? So it has absolutely been scientifically documented that fish feel fear. They respond to dangerous situations the same way as any other animal. Their breathing gets faster. They release distress pheromones. They show signs of panic. They may flee or freeze. They will, even after a traumatic experience, some of them will stop eating, like in trauma response, right? So, these are all very deeply emotional reactions. We can go to the next one. So they have cognitive ability and a complex life. Science has discovered that fish are sentient and aware. They're communicative. They're social. They can solve puzzles. They also play. And play, according to our scientific whatever of, how intelligent beings are, play is considered to be a very intelligent thing to engage in. For youth and adults of a species. And fish actually engage in every kind of scientific play that has been documented. They engage in object play, solitary play, play within their own species, interspecies play with other species. They're very communicative, wide range of acoustic sounds. They talk to each other for various reasons. Researchers have even studied or observed fish singing. They just don't have any other word for it. A group of fish that will actually make noise together in for no apparent reason, for pleasure, right? They sing. Okay, so learning. I'm going to give a bit of a disclaimer here. I'm going to talk about a study that was done on fish, and I want to be clear that all that I've been talking about, intelligence, memory capacity, emotional aptitude, all of that, right? That should not be the determining factor as to whether we exploit an animal, to whether we hurt an animal, whether we confine and kill an animal. The only factor we should consider is, can that animal feel pain and suffer? And can they experience fear and anxiety? Those are the things we need to look at. And fish, along with every other mammal and avian, can experience fear and can experience pain. So let's put that aside. But interesting stuff. It's good to get to know them. That's why I talk about this stuff. You just want to know these animals. So there was a study done. How are we doing on time? Do I have 20 minutes? Okay. There was a study done. I'm going to try to make it fast. There were 2 plates of food given to animals. They did this on several species of monkeys as well as fish. The 2 plates of food, there was same food, same amount of food on both plates. The only difference is the blue plate if you came, they introduce the animal to the area, and if they start eating on the blue plate, the red plate gets taken away. But if they start eating on the red plate, then the blue plate stays, okay? It's a trial and error puzzle that they gave to numerous species. They gave this to capuchin monkeys, orangutans, and chimpanzee, as well as several species of fish. Guess who figured it out faster? The fish. Every species of fish figured it out in half the time of the monkeys. And actually, chimpanzees never did quite figure it out. So it just, the reason I say this is it just kind of flips what we think we know on its head, right? It flips what we think we know on its head about these animals. Okay, I'm going to end with a story about fish. This is a story of Big Red. Next slide, is it coming? There we go. Blackie and Big Red. Okay, this was an observation made by a caretaker of a couple of goldfish, Blackie and Big Red. And this is not actually Big Red, just a representation. Kind of shows you what he would look like. Blackie was born a little wonky, and he couldn't swim properly, and he just kind of hopped around the bottom of the tank. When it was feeding time, you know, they flake the fish food on the top, and it kind of flakes down, right? Big Red would swim under Blackie and lift Blackie up so that Blackie could eat first. And then when Blackie had had his fill, he'd set him down, and then Big Red could eat, okay? There's so much going on there with Big Red. Big Red is exhibiting behaviors like compassion, kindness, friendship, empathy, caretaking, selflessness, letting Blackie eat first, generosity. Would you have ever thought of those words about a fish before? Probably not. But now you know Blackie and Big Red's story. So fish are so much deeper than we think. Last slide on fish. This is a great book. If you want more information on fish, What a Fish Knows, fantastic book. And I'm going to read this quote by Jonathan Balcombe. Fish are individuals with personality and relationships. He or she can plan and learn, perceive and innovate, soothe and scheme, experience moments of pleasure, fear, playfulness, and pain. A fish and joy. A fish feels and a fish knows. Okay, moving on to our fifth reason for living vegan, and that is the Humane Hoax. What is the Humane Hoax? Okay, so this is my wheelhouse. This is, I have written 2 books on this issue. So I'm going to go quick because I have a lot of presentations out in the world on this issue. So if you want to go deeper, Google my name, and that's probably the presentation that would come up. I do a lot of presentations on Humane Hoax. But a quick definition is the new labeling and marketing of animal products that convey a false sense that there is some improvement in the industry when none exist, either environmentally or ethically. And you know, some people call it humane washing, greenwashing. Anyone is welcome to come and sit over here. There's a lot of chairs over here. All right, so inherent cruelties. What I mean by that, to produce a profitable product, the well-being of the animal will have to be compromised in some fundamental ways, no matter how humane an operation wants to be. To be profitable in this current market, they have to do certain things. Cruelties like mutilations of their bodies, separation of families, slaughter at a very young age. Go to the next slide. So the industry loves to focus on things that they can change. And what they can change is the size of their confinement. They can give them a little more room, right? So that's where we get cage-free eggs, right? A lot of emphasis on cage-free eggs, right? Oh, we got them out of the cages. Everything's fine now. That is not the only horror of their existence. They face so much more than just that. And again, I'm not going to get into the details because I wrote 2 books about it. So The Ultimate Betrayal, I wrote this one 12 years ago, still very relevant and has only done nothing but get worse. And then The Humane Hoax is a follow-up anthology that just came out a year ago with 18 contributing authors on this subject. So if you want more information on this, I encourage that. Next slide. So, responsibly raised. This is a new one we're seeing now. Responsibly raised and unconditionally loved. So this one just really, I just have to point this out. So responsibly, what does it mean? What does it mean? You know, ethically, environmentally, what are they talking about? It's sufficiently vague that it can be whatever you're worried about, What are you worried about? Oh, we got you covered. Responsibly raised, right? Unconditionally loved. Well, okay. Now we're getting into some like weird cognitive dissonance areas, right? What are we looking at here? We're looking at a burrito. So we're not talking about the burrito was unconditionally loved. Oh, you mean it was the animal that's cut up inside the burrito that was unconditionally loved? What? I mean, whoa. So, you know, it's just very bizarre. Let's just go to the next slide. Why do people seek these humane labels? It's because they care. They care about animals. And that, I feel, is really the hopeful part, right? That these labels wouldn't sell if people didn't care. So that's great. I love that. And I also feel that the logical progression of buying these humane labels, caring about the animals, wanting them to be humane, we're going to get to the point where we realize that you cannot commodify and kill someone and it be humane. There's no right way to do the wrong thing, right? You can't do it. We will get there. I have faith in the human race that we will get there. However, we can't be complacent about it because guess what? The industry is lying to them. The industry is lying with their labels and their lovely websites and all of the marketing. So we have to speak out about the truth of this industry. Okay, last slide, or last part of this, next slide, last part of this. Quote from my book, this is one of the contributing authors to my book, Devanathan Nair, redefining terms to imply that the humane treatment of animals is possible within the framework of animal agriculture, known as humane washing, has been instrumental in providing the discourse necessary for continued exploitation of animals, and abuse of animals. So this is the market. This is the market's way of continuing to do what they're doing. Is all these labels. Okay, so let's move on to the sixth reason for living vegan, and that is, pandemics. We all know about pandemics now, right? We know a lot more than we ever wanted to know and ever thought we would know 6 years ago. There's a lot of empty chairs over here if anybody wants to sit down. Okay, so and this is a sign. Well, I'll just read this with you here. We'll read the words. Zoonotic diseases come from unethical and unsanitary interactions with animals and non-human, interactions with humans and non-human animals. Most of the world's major outbreaks of infectious diseases since 1900 have been due to some form of animal exploitation. Okay, and this is a sign outside of a chicken farm. I took this picture of the sign, and guess what? Chickens are really easy to hide. They're so easy to hide. You probably could drive by a chicken farm and never know. They're hidden away in rural areas in these windowless warehouses. You just don't even know that it's a chicken farm for their flesh or their eggs. However, if you see a sign like this, that may clue you in. Keep out, biohazard, biosecure, you know. They know how toxic their industry is and how susceptible to virus their industry is. So anyway, let's see. So, okay, yeah, I will talk about this. All right. I'm trying time-wise to figure out what I can and can't talk about, but you know, the COVID pandemic, we had two different kind of competing, vying sources, right, of the pandemic, of the COVID-19 virus. Either one of them, it doesn't. I mean, I don't. You know, I'm not going to get into what I think, but I don't care really. But either one of them were from speciesist attitudes, were speciesist reasons. Okay, if it came from the lab, that's experimenting on animals. If it came from the wet market, that is, you know, confining and killing animals. We're encroaching on wild areas and confining and killing animals. So, according to the Center for Disease Control, 3 out of 4 novel infectious diseases come from human-animal contact, and that contact is always humans confining and butchering and eating animals, right? So, these are the reasons. So, zoonotic diseases that have caused numerous epidemics, Ebola, AIDS, SARS, MERS, all originated from butchering and eating wild animals. Next slide. But capturing wildlife is not the only culprit. Farmed animals, of course. the birds, cows, pigs, goats that we confine and kill and eat have also been a source of infectious disease outbreaks, mass illness, swine flu, bird flu. I mean, we are in the middle of it right now. 60 Minutes just did this amazing piece on bird flu. I don't know if anybody saw it, but it's very recent. I encourage you to check it out. I was just like, whoa, it's scary. It's very scary what's happening right now with bird flu. And, you know, I also really want to be cautious not to make a blanket statement that all things would be, you know, that kill us would be eliminated if we stopped exploiting animals. That is not true. In this post-fact era, I want to be very clear, you know, and be factual about the science. Some of the exceptions to what I have been talking about is that malaria is caused by mosquitoes, Lyme's disease caused by ticks, but it's, you know, it's the bacteria that's transmitted from ticks. So there's exceptions to this. However, the truth about zoonotic diseases is scary enough, right? And so much of our diseases that we face as humans come from our human-animal contact, okay? So we could really preempt and eliminate that next pandemic. Let's stop farming animals. It could save so many lives, human lives. Okay, moving on to the last reason for living vegan, and that is Ahimsa, nonviolence. Okay, so I started this whole presentation with a concept, a word that you may not have been familiar with, speciesism. And now I'm going to end with a concept or word that you may not be familiar with, and that is Ahimsa, nonviolence. It's a Sanskrit term. Himsa means harm. Negates it. Nonviolence, non-harming. But really you could look at Ahimsa as kind of a presence of dynamic compassion, right? Active, dynamic compassion, being compassionate in all that we do, being nonviolent in every way, our words, our deeds, our thoughts even. You know, I think I mentioned that there's different veganisms, right? There's the whole food plant-based, nutrition-based vegans. They're in the next room. We've got, you know, the ethical vegans, the philosophical vegans. Well, there's also spiritual vegans, and I don't think a lot of people go into it because of this reason, but it evolves, right? It evolves as a vegan. You start seeing the connections and feeling that this, wow, it's kind of an expression of your spirituality. That's happened for me. And, you know, my husband and I have gone deep into studying Hinduism, Jainism. If you're not familiar with the Jains are another Dharma tradition. You're familiar with Buddhism and Hinduism. Jains are another Dharma traditions out of Southeast Asia, India. And the Jains are amazing. I love studying and hearing about the Jains. They put Ahimsa at the highest, above everything. It's living a non-violent life. And, you know, even though I've dedicated myself to veganism for over 30 years, I have always felt that just vegan, it's not enough. I really believe that we need a fundamental consciousness shift as a society, right? I mean, just getting everybody to eat veggie burgers, you know, buy the veggie, oh, that's great. That's a good start, right? But that's just habit, and I'm so afraid that we may so easily slip back into eating meat if habits start to change, you know, that kind of thing. It's got to be more than that. It's got to be deeper than that, right? We need to, I feel like we need a shift in our psyche, our priorities as a society, what we care about, what we're going to protect. And that should be all of life on this planet, right? And what we have respect and reverence for as well. So, you know, and I don't feel that spirituality or religion or spirituality has to be the reason or the way, you know, whatever. But I think that it can be a really a beautiful guiding force in our lives. And, you know, it's just been amazing to learn about Ahimsa. Ahimsa Paramo Dharma is a term that the Jains use, others in you know, Buddhism, Hinduism use this as well. And Ahimsa Paramo Dharma basically means that Ahimsa, nonviolence, is the highest principle, the ethical imperative, right? If when faced with any situation, find the nonviolent path. It's just beautiful, really beautiful. And boy, we need some nonviolence right now, right? We need some kindness right now, really bad. So, yeah, so if this kind of thing interests you, we'll go to the next slide. My husband and I do an online circle. We call it the Ahimsa Living Circle, and we talk about these kinds of things, spiritual veganism and the Dharma traditions, and it's every second Saturday of the month, and actually the next one will be on Saturday, May 10th, this Saturday coming up. You're welcome to join us. It is free. You just register, and you know, if you want to check it out. So I'll wrap up by saying that I really, I encourage you to find what gives your life meaning, really. What you can do to help bring about this consciousness shift that I was talking about and truly create this compassionate, loving vegan world that we all need and want to see. And I encourage you to be inspired by Ahimsa, right? To live every minute of your life considering nonviolence and the nonviolent path, and not just meditating on it, but taking action. We have to take action. How can our actions bring harmony to a world out of balance? And I think that being vegan is the best way to start. That's the foundation. Okay, I'll just give a plug for my podcast here at the end, Hope for the Animals podcast. I do long-form interviews with inspiring animal people, and I do a solo episode every now and again. So please check it out. I'd love you to hear my podcast, give me any feedback, and we'll wrap it up, last slide, with a quote from my first book, The Ultimate Betrayal. Most people have compassion for animals in need and don't want them to die. But their window of compassion is only open for certain species. Open the window wide and let farmed animals into your sight of concern. We would offer assistance to an animal in distress if it was within our ability to help them. Why not? Pigs. Why aren't pigs, cows, chickens? Why are they exempt from this compassion? And I would add fish in there too. I should have added fish in there too. All right, that's it. Thank you very much. Thank you. And here's my info if you want to snap a picture of all my links.